1963 will bring Americans feelings both of exaltation and tremendous loss. The Reverend Martin Luther King Jr.'s I Have a Dream speech at a Washington, D.C. civil rights demonstration before 200,000 will electrify the world. And the world, and especially Americans, will be stunned this year by the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. But while the magic of Camelot that many felt the Kennedys brought to Washington will be over, the world problems that Kennedy faced will stay with us, to be borne by the new president, Lyndon Baines Johnson. U.S. troops are building up in Vietnam. There will be more than 15,000 military advisors there this year. The situation is ominous and growing more dangerous. Communist-controlled guerrillas supported by North Vietnam will keep the larger South Vietnamese army off balance with their hit-and-run tactics. But while a conflict heats up in Asia, our relations with the Soviet Union will seem to improve this year. A hotline will be opened between Moscow and Washington to reduce the risk of accidental war. And Great Britain, along with the United States, will sign a nuclear test ban treaty with the Soviet Union, banning nuclear tests in the atmosphere. This and much more is the year 1963. Let's watch.
Well, Kathy goes with Bob, Millie goes with Jack. They went down a lover lane and never coming back because they got. Well, everybody's got the news. Now everybody's dancing and dancing to the rock and roll blues. Well, Mama heard it once, Daddy heard it too. When they heard that rock and roll, they knew just what to do because they got it. Well, everybody's got the news. Well, everybody's dancing and dancing to the rock and roll blues. Well, I went down to the corner, saw my baby there. Said, hey, baby, don't you be no square because they got it. Well, everybody's got the news. Well, everybody's dancing and dancing to the rock and roll blues.
Congress convenes in Washington for a busy session. There are some new faces on Capitol Hill, and among them are 12 new senators, 9 Democrats and 3 Republicans. They are sworn in by Vice President Lyndon Johnson before taking up their new duties. Abraham Ribicoff gave up his cabinet post to become Connecticut senator, and another new face is Daniel Inouye of Hawaii. Most interest, however, centers around Edward Ted Kennedy, the third brother to achieve success in the national political arena. Congress begins its first session by establishing some sort of record. When called to order by House Speaker McCormick, only 1 senator and 1 representative are absent. One of Washington's most distinguished throngs is at the National Gallery of Art to welcome a distinguished visitor. President and Mrs. Kennedy, with French Cultural Minister André Malraux and his wife, pay homage to the first public appearance of Mona Lisa, the Leonardo da Vinci painting that has captured the fancy of generations for 400 years. The president expresses the gratification of the nation.
Mr. Minister, we in the United States are grateful for this loan from the leading artistic power in the world, France.
Scores of cameramen record the event as the presidential party leads a tribute to the lady who will play host to many, many thousands in the next 3 weeks. The enigmatic smile acts like a magnet to both art lovers and the curious. The next day, the gallery is jammed as the crowd passes by the painting 4 abreast. It is estimated by a curious statistician that each viewer has from 3 to 5 seconds in front of the painting. Some stand in line repeatedly for just one more glimpse of the smile that has launched 1,000 arguments. It's hail and farewell to Alcatraz. The dread rock in San Francisco Bay plays host to the press on its closing day. For the first time in its long penal history, reporters and cameramen are allowed to roam its innermost cell blocks and cells at will. Where handcuffs and leg irons, the last 27 of its 1,500 prisoners leave the crumbling, unsalvageable fortress for more modern federal penitentiaries. Under heavy guard, they will be flown to maximum security quarters in Atlanta, Leavenworth, and eventually the new Marion prison in southern Illinois. Maintenance guards will be the only inhabitants of the island until its final disposition is decided by Congress and the state of California. Families of the guards and prison workers who are being transferred to other assignments are probably the only ones who say goodbye to Alcatraz with any regret. Chicago's O'Hare Airport, which for some time already has been the world's busiest flying field, is officially dedicated. President Kennedy, in a 3-hour jaunt from Washington, pays tribute to Lieutenant Commander Edward H. O'Hare, the naval aviation hero of World War II, for whom the field is named. 1,000 or more flights come in or out of here each day. Later, a parade through the Loop takes Mr. Kennedy to a civic luncheon. He takes the opportunity to urge Chicagoans to support his $10.3 billion tax cut proposal, without which, he says, the unemployment rate will inevitably keep rising. When the submarine Thresher slid down the ways at Portsmouth, New Hampshire in July of 1960, it was a gala, patriotic affair. The fastest and deepest diving submarine was about to join Uncle Sam's nuclear fleet. A year later, she was commissioned and began a long series of sea trials with a hand-picked crew, the flower of volunteers for the silent service. Last July, the Thresher went into the yards for a shakedown overhaul, and new secret equipment was installed. She then put to sea and successfully went through shallow dives. The next day, a deep dive was scheduled. She'd never surfaced. No sooner had the tender Skylark reported something amiss than Navy search teams went into action. There was optimism at first. Maybe her communication equipment was faulty. With the hours, hope waned. At the point where the Thresher submerged, 220 miles east of Boston, rescue craft knew that the sea's depth was 1.5 miles. But the search went on. Many recall the epic of the submarine Squalus in 1939. She went down off New Hampshire, crippled in the midst of a dive. But the Squalus was a different story. A marker was spotted, and the Navy put new rescue techniques into operation. A bell was attached to the sub, and 33 men of the 59-man crew were rescued. The others had been trapped in a flooded bulkhead. The day following the Thresher's fatal dive, search vessels discover oil slicks and debris that confirm the worst fears. It is the duty of Admiral George Anderson, Chief of Naval Operations, to announce the loss that saddens a nation.
I conclude with great regret and sadness that this ship with 129 fine souls aboard is lost.
They rest in the bosom of the sea they loved, heroes who died pushing back the frontiers of man's knowledge. The most glamorous affair in glamorous Hollywood draws a glittering crowd. The 35th Annual Academy Awards. There's an air of electrified anticipation among the stars, including Angie Dickinson, who is Gregory Peck's new leading lady in Captain Newman, M.D. The first Oscar is announced, the Best Supporting Actor.
And the winner is Ed Begley in Quick
Veteran Ed Begley receives the award for his work in Sweet Bird of Youth. Then the accolade for Best Supporting Actress.
The winner is Patty Duke in The Miracle Worker.
Patty Duke, the most gifted juvenile actress, created a sensation in The Miracle Worker. The men behind the scenes are honored, too, for the best achievement in art direction, Universal's To Kill a Mockingbird. Additional honors are heaped on To Kill a Mockingbird as it tops them all as the best screenplay. Now the Oscar for the Best Actress.
And the winner is Anne Bancroft in Miracle Worker.
Miss Bancroft is playing on the New York stage, and Joan Crawford accepts for the absent star. The evening moves swiftly to a climax. The Best Picture.
The winner is Lawrence of Arabia, Sam Stevens.
It's the second Oscar for producer Sam Spiegel, who won in 1957. Then the moment all have waited for, the Best Actor of the Year.
Now, the winner is Gregory Peck.
Mr. Peck wins his first Oscar. He's been nominated before for his outstanding portrayal of the lawyer in Universal's To Kill a Mockingbird.
Thank you, fellow Academy members. Thank you, Harper Lee, Alan Pakula, Robert Milligan, Russ Harlan, all of my good friends and associates at the studio. Thank you, members of the press who cover the local scene, critics, columnists across the country who've approved of my work and said so. And I want to thank my family, my good close friends who've lent me inspiration and moral support and affection. Thank you very much.
Prince Rainier III of Monaco arrives in New York with his daughter Caroline for a 6-week visit in the United States. His princess, the former Grace Kelly, is arriving on a later flight with the heir to the throne, their son. Prince Rainier and the former movie star will celebrate their 7th wedding anniversary while here. 4 hours later, Princess Grace arrives with Prince Albert. The family is leaving immediately for Philadelphia, Grace's old hometown, where they will open a travel exhibit and dedicate a theater at Ravenhill Academy in memory of her father. Though a titled princess, Her Highness says she remains a Philadelphia girl at heart. Welcome home. The University of Alabama campus at Tuscaloosa is under a tight security guard of state police as Governor George Wallace appeals for calm and prepares to confront a deputy U.S. attorney. The federal officers are armed with a proclamation from President Kennedy urging the governor to end his efforts to prevent 2 Negro students from registering at the university. The governor is adamant. He made a campaign promise to stand in the doorway himself to prevent the integration of the last all-white state university. After the federal officers leave, there's a lull of several hours while President Kennedy federalizes the Alabama National Guard and they move to the campus. Brigadier General Henry Graham arrives to tell the governor, "It's my sad duty to ask you to step aside on orders of the President of the United States." The governor yields to federal authority, but promises to continue what he terms a constitutional fight. There was no untoward incident at any time during this confrontation of state and federal authority. Five minutes after the governor leaves, James Hood is the first of his race to become a University of Alabama student. He is followed into the registrar's office by Vivian Malone. Both the students are 20 years old and will take summer courses. A patient and prayerful crowd waits in St. Peter's Square as the cardinals of the Catholic Church in solemn conclave cast their 5th ballot for a successor to Pope John. Then, puffs of white smoke from a stove in the Sistine Chapel. A pope has been elected. The burning ballots signal the joyous news. When the word spread through Rome like wildfire, St. Peter's Square was filled with cheering crowds within moments. There's rejoicing throughout the world. Inside the Sistine Chapel, one seat is vacant, the one that was occupied by Giovanni Battista Cardinal Montini. He now reigns as the 261st successor to St. Peter. In papal robes, the new pontiff announces he will take the name of Paul VI. He was close to his predecessor, Pope John, and is quick to announce that he will continue that pontiff's progressive policies. The new pope's first public appearance is to impart the blessing Urbi et Orbi to the city and to the world. The new pontiff was the first cardinal created by Pope John And as Pope Paul, he is going to continue the Ecumenical Council. Thus, the new spiritual leader of 500 million Catholics pledges to make his church a dynamic force in the manner of Pope John XXIII. They're rolling out the red carpet at the Bonn airport for the arrival of President Kennedy as he starts a 4-day working visit to Germany. He's greeted by Chancellor Adenauer on behalf of the nation and receives a rousing welcome from the thousands who could crowd into the airport. He reviews an honor guard in the traditional manner, and he is also greeted by Vice Chancellor Erhard. Then the trip into Cologne with Mr. Adenauer. The route is lined with people, and the square in front of the cathedral is jammed. It is officially estimated that 350,000 greet the president as he arrives to attend Mass at that medieval cathedral. This is twice the number that welcomed President Charles de Gaulle in September, when he was here to woo Adenauer into the French camp. France has suggested that the U.S. might no longer be willing to meet its commitments in Europe. Mr. Kennedy pledged that the U.S. will remain in Europe as long as desired or required. The crowd was conquered by Kennedy and swept through police lines, both in Cologne and in Bonn, where 50,000 cheered themselves hoarse. Officials say as many as 2 million people greeted the president on his first day in Germany. In front of Bonn City Hall, Mr. Kennedy again hammers home his theme. The U.S. will never relax in backing freedom for all of Europe. The president's trip is billed as a visit to the German people. He appears to have won friends by the millions. A new weapon is installed in the Pentagon, but it's a weapon of peace. This is the teletype that will operate at the U.S. end of an open line to Moscow. This link, it is hoped, will help avoid misunderstandings that could possibly trigger a catastrophe. Now, a president could be in touch with the Russian premier in a matter of seconds. Meanwhile, there's another thaw in the Cold War. The Russian ambassador, Anatoly Dobrinin, arrives at the White House with a message from Chairman Khrushchev for President Kennedy. The two men met for 40 minutes, and the ambassador then said that the president will confer with Soviet Foreign Minister Gromyko next month on further steps to ease tensions.
We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome someday.
Just 100 years after Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation that freed the slaves, 200,000 people converge on the nation's capital to rally for civil rights. They come by train, they come by bus and by air. They come from the north, the south, the east and west. They come united in one cause, to urge Congress to pass a civil rights bill to end forever the blight of racial inequity. This great throng with a cause gathers on the mall that stretches from the Washington Monument toward the Capitol. From the break of dawn, they filter into the city. By 9:30, it is estimated that 40,000 had assembled. But it's more like a Sunday outing as they form into groups and discuss the day quietly. They are scheduled to move to the Lincoln Memorial at noon to hear the top leaders of the movement. Those leaders, at the moment, are conferring on Capitol Hill with members of Congress, pointing up the aims of the rally. By 11:30, there are more than 200,000 thronging the mall, a crowd that is bigger than the most optimistic forecasts. Now there's a growing animation. It seems as if the demonstrators were finding strength in each other, had discovered their cause was a bond. The crowd became impatient to get started, and they moved toward the Lincoln Memorial before the scheduled hour. They move with good humor, laughter, and song. Few realize that in a sense they are participants in an historical day. it will become part of the American scene that today's gathering is the largest in Washington's history. The men who organized the rally walk with springing steps toward the speaker stand. On the left, Roy Wilkins with A. Philip Randolph. They have fought their fight all of their adult lives. In the van is Martin Luther King, who has been jailed 12 times on racial issues. Others on hand include Walter Reuther, head of the auto workers. Authorities were fearful of disorders, and there were 5,000 uniformed men on duty. They had little to do but keep dissident groups away from the rally. Arrests in Washington were below normal. Police attribute this to the fact that for the first time in 30 years, you couldn't even buy a beer in Washington. The civil rights marches needed no stimulants like that. They provided their own, with songs that ranged from the sacred to the hillbilly, but with the one recurring theme, the cause of 20 million Negroes. The crowd assembled around the reflecting pool before the Lincoln Memorial occupies every inch on the lawns and under the trees. And there's a great swell of cheers to welcome Martin Luther King to the speaker's podium, a man who stands as a symbol of all they are fighting for. Later, Mr. King and the other leaders are to go to the White House, where the president said that everyone must be impressed with the demonstration of the throng's faith and confidence in our democratic form of government. However, he warned, there's a long fight ahead in Congress. The theme, the keynote, the thought uppermost in minds of all here today is best set forth by Dr. King. He sums up a day the Capitol will long remember.
I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will they be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream.
Washington, D.C., 1963. Democracy speaks in a mighty voice. The nation's underworld gets the unwelcome spotlight of publicity as the Senate's Investigations Subcommittee begins new hearings on crime. Arkansas Senator McClelland is at the helm. Attorney General Robert Kennedy paints a grim picture of the rise of lawlessness under the Cosa Nostra, or mafia. This he describes as the government of organized gambling, narcotics peddling, extortion, racketeering, and controlling of certain trade unions. He says the income runs into billions. These hearings always attract a large number of spectators. This one is particularly crowded, awaiting the first public appearance of Joseph Velaki, the convicted hoodlum whose confessions to the FBI have reportedly put a price of $100,000 on his head by the infuriated mafia. Bikini days are over, and now the interest is in fashions for cold weather, for formal parties and opening nights. A collection by West Berlin designer Heinz Ostergaard emphasizes a long, extended silhouette. A white fox collar is both sensibly warm for wintertime and perky for fun. The difference between just a nice dress and an amusing one can be a little bow placed where nobody would expect it to be. In the words of Herr Ostergaard, brocade costumes peel out of white fox colors like first flowers out of the last snow. That's what he said. Give the designer a play apron, a dirndl, and some French lingerie, and what does he come up with? A dinner gown, of course. There's more than just that touch of make over this wool georgette. Salome had 7 veils, but look what they got her. A girl could get a head much better in far fewer veils. Still more veils. Not very warming, perhaps, but in real life, the girl would wear the dress in a ballroom, not out here. 1963 was a golden year in sports, right from baseball's opening day, when President Kennedy attended the Baltimore-Washington game to throw out the first ball. The baseball season wound up in a blaze of glory. Glory for pitcher Sandy Koufax and his Dodgers, that is. Sandy tamed the mighty Yankee batters in the first game of the World Series and set a new strikeout record as he fanned 15 victims. When John Roseboro comes to bat in the second inning, he completes the rout of the Yankees as he hits a towering homer with 2 men on. The Dodgers go on to win the opener and the next 2 games. They go into the 4th game, leading 3 games to nothing. And again, it's Koufax for the Dodgers against Yankee Whitey Ford. The Yankee ace serves up a home run ball to Frank Howard in the 5th inning, and that run sends the Dodgers on to a 2-1 victory that is high drama right to the last strikeout. In the 9th, Koufax strikes out the first man and then fans Mickey Mantle. Then Hector Lopez half swings and it's an easy final out. Koufax made toothpicks of the mighty Yankee bats, and for the first time in history, the Yankees lose the World Series in 4 straight games. The golfing world welcomed the 23-year-old newcomer to its circle of fame. Young Jack Nicklaus comes down to the last hole in the Masters tourney, needing a par 4 to win and 2 putts to do it in. After missing his long one, he displays the icy calm that has become his trademark to sink his second one to beat Tony Lima by a stroke. He adds the Masters to his 1962 Open title and promises to be one of golfdom's greatest. When Arnold Palmer helps him on with the Masters jacket, you can see it fits he to a T. The U.S. Open was a storybook tale as Julius Boros comes down to the final green in a playoff round. Winds up defeating Arnold Palmer and Jackie Cupid. Boros is the oldest man ever to win the Open, and he takes the top prize just 11 years after he first won the Open title. He beats Cupid by 3 strokes and Palmer by 6. Julius Boros, golf's Cinderella Man. A 17-year-old whiz made a big splash in the swimming world. Don Schollander, a California high school student, sets a 400-meter mark in the national AAU meet and then goes out for a record in the 200-meter freestyle. Don's form is superb, and he makes the long grind look like an effortless romp. He comes knifing down to the finish with a new record of 1 minute, 59 seconds. Only 17, and Don Schollander is already a real champ. Uncle Sam has his astronauts, and he has John Pennell, the world's highest flyer in the pole vault. In 1963, Pennell became the first man to clear 17 feet. This was the 7th time he set a pole vault record, and he made every jump look easy. It is easy if your name is John Pennell. C.K. Yang, a California college student, sets a 100-meter decathlon record as he begins an assault on the 10-event track and field trial. He picks up another 900 points in the high jump before going on to add another 700 in the shot put. His javelin throw adds another 1,000 points, and he is far from finished. Nationalist China's gift to Uncle Sam's Olympic team pole vaults better than 15 feet and winds up with 9,121 points. His coach says he'll be the next Olympic decathlon champ. The Kentucky Derby saw a 9-to-1 shot, Shadowgay, run the favored Never Bend and other highly rated horses right into the ground. It was a thriller down to the wire. In the Belmont Stakes, Shadowgay played the same winning tune as he moves up on the rail to overtake Candy Spots and goes on to win. It's a thriller right out of fiction as Shadowgay thunders past Candy Spots and uncorks his great racing form to scoot home an easy winner. As a 3-year-old, this makes 5 out of 6 races. Gay is the word for Shadowgay. For the 4th straight time, the mighty Kelso was named Horse of the Year. With earnings well over $1.5 million mark, Kelso could well be the greatest horse of all time. The Toronto Maple Leafs and the Detroit Red Wings went into the 5th game of the Stanley Cup Series tied 2-2. It was Toronto that had the reserve to outskate Detroit, and they brought the trophy back to Canada for the 2nd straight year by a score of 3-1. Loyola and the University of Cincinnati battled into overtime for the collegiate basketball title. It was a seesaw game right up to the final seconds. With the score 58-58, Loyola's Hunter and Rouse team up for the winning basket. Throughout the year of 1963, every sport scored high in action and thrill. A dark page in the annals of America has been written to the crack of an assassin's bullet. A nation mourns, the world grieves. The man who became 35th president less than 3 years ago is dead. He led his country boldly through the treacherous shoals of Cold War crises. His firm commitments to support the cause of democracy throughout the world won him acclaim almost unprecedented in the history of the presidency. He faced up to communist threats with such firm shows of force that Khrushchev backed down in Cuba, softened the hard red line on Berlin. He brought to the White House the vigor of youth and a family that captivated the hearts of all. No possible shadow loomed over this last group picture of his family, John and Jacqueline, John and Caroline. Death has closed the cover on album portraits like this. His rendezvous with grim destiny begins a little after noontime as his plane lands in Dallas. Earlier, he had received a tumultuous reception in Fort Worth, and now more thousands are waiting to greet him in downtown Dallas. But death is less than 1 short hour away. At 1:25, the motorcade moves into the downtown area. Death is 6 minutes away. In a warehouse, a sniper with a rifle poised waits. The cheers of the crowd almost muffle the 3 shots. The assassin's aim is deadly. The area is aswarm with police, rangers, and Secret Service men. The murderer slips the net, but a few blocks away, a man is captured after he is reported to have killed a policeman. That man is a 24-year-old pro-Castro Texan who once sought Soviet citizenship. He is charged with murder. Meanwhile, the president had been rushed to a nearby hospital where life lingered as a waiting world prayed. A half hour later, he was dead, his life crushed like his wife's abandoned bouquet. A shocked nation weeps. Across the country, around the world, disbelief was the first reaction. Then a great outpouring of grief, shock, and revulsion. A proud banner is lowered. The empty White House is a symbol of this infamous mockery of American ideals of peace and freedom. Peoples of all faiths unite in prayer for the first Catholic to become president. The United Nations General Assembly joins in a minute of silent tribute to the man who fought so hard and valiantly for the ideals of this international body. The Iron Curtain was dissolved in the sincerity of their sorrow. As always, democracy finds its strength in the continuity of the presidency. Lyndon B. Johnson becomes the 36th President of the United States, just 99 minutes after his predecessor's life had ebbed away. The widow, with stamina born of courage, stands bravely by the new president's side. Mr. Johnson accompanies the martyred president's body back to the Capitol, a Capitol still paralyzed by shock. Sad tasks are ahead. It is arranged that the president's body will first lie in repose at the White House. Then it will be moved to the rotunda of the Capitol for public homage. The president's body is met by a cordon of servicemen. They represent all the armed forces in honoring their commander-in-chief. The widow, on the arm of her brother-in-law, remains a towering figure of fortitude through her long ordeal. Steadfast in death as in life, she accompanies her beloved on his lonely ride. Then President Johnson and the First Lady leave the plane. Now the Texan, who has devoted his life to an energetic public career, faces the burdens of office in days of foreign and domestic crises to keep burning the torch that has inspired a free world. With humility, the President of the United States harks to the future.
This is a sad time for all people. We have suffered a loss that cannot be weighed. For me, it is a deep personal tragedy. I know that the world shares the sorrow that Mrs. Kennedy and her family bear. I will do my best. That is all I can do. I ask for your help and God's.
In some men, the presidency has bred greatness. They have become giants forged in the crucible of courage. Now begins a new chapter in the history of a nation grown great under the inspired leadership of great men. President Johnson faces his monumental tasks with a sense of integrity that is unquestioned, with knowledge that breeds respect, and with hope that God will guide his hand. Far into his first night as president, he faces his awesome future unflinchingly. The light of reason won't be dimmed by a rifle shot. May God, in his wisdom, help President Johnson keep it shining brightly. Madness and hate erupt anew in Dallas as President Kennedy's accused assassin is shot down himself during a jail transfer. There's an ominous symbol in Lee Harvey Oswald's murder weapon as he is taken to the city jail basement where an armored car is to move him to a maximum security cell. Oswald walks his last mile. His assailant moves in from the right.
There is Lee Oswald. He's been shot. He's been shot. Lee Oswald has been shot.
Now, from another camera, the motion is slowed. The murderer moves in, and here is the shame of all America as Jack Rubenstein takes the law unto himself. The dying Oswald is rushed to the same hospital where President Kennedy died. Doctors work to save his life. But 48 hours and 7 minutes after the president's death, his accused slayer is dead. The sound of the muffled drum sweeps in melancholy waves over the hushed throng. A hush broken only by a stifled sob, a murmured prayer. A whole people is lifted up in common sorrow and ennobled in their hearts. Down this avenue of sadness, they bring President John F. Kennedy, martyred hero, to lie in state under the great dome of the Capitol. Mrs. Kennedy begins the long hours of her public grief with the courageous dignity that has marked each moment of her ordeal. Caroline and John seem to mirror their mother's poise. With President Johnson and Robert Kennedy, she is in the van of the mourners who will pay their respects in the historic rotunda of the Capitol. President Johnson represents a sorrowing people as he places a wreath marked "From President Johnson and the Nation." Mrs. Kennedy comes forward with Caroline in a tableau that calls for no words. Its poignancy calls only for tears. Bearing the burden of their own sorrow, 250,000 people braved near freezing weather to pass by the dead president in tribute. Some waited for as long as 12 hours in a line that at times stretched for 10 miles. The old, the young, the aged, the children. They became one in their grief, in the spontaneous outpouring that throws up an enduring memorial to the American spirit. And so they kept their vigil through the long and lonely night, each man a tiny island of sadness, buffeted by the seas of unhappy fate. The next day, the body is borne to St. Matthew's Cathedral, with Mrs. Kennedy and the President's family walking in humble prayer behind the caisson. Not since the funeral of Britain's King Edward VII in 1910 has there been such a gathering of kings and queens, presidents and premiers. 220 dignitaries from 92 foreign lands honor the warrior who died while fighting for peace and liberty and the dignity of man. Erect and proud, Mrs. Kennedy walks the 6 long blocks with firm step yet tearful eye. At the cathedral, a pontifical funeral mass is to be said for the repose of the soul of the first Roman Catholic president, a devout man from a devout family, who today find deep solace in the solemn rites of their church. As the distinguished mourners gather in St. Matthew's, peoples of all faiths around the world join them in prayers. Mass is read in Moscow, Buddhists pray in South Vietnam, Shinto priests conduct services in Tokyo, a rabbi exhorts God in Israel. The foreign dignitaries move unobtrusively to their pews. They attach little importance to their own identities today. Joining the humble in the 4 corners of the earth, they pray, each in his own way, that the soaring spirit that was President Kennedy in life may find eternal rest in death. The strains of the Ave Maria reach out like a caress. Mrs. Kennedy requested it. The Ave Maria was sung at her wedding. After the sacrifice of the Mass, there are prayers aloud in the tongues of all faiths. Then will come the solemn moment when the incense is tossed on hot coals and Cardinal Cushing, an old family friend, blesses the mortal remains of John F. Kennedy. From St. Matthew's, the cortege is to cross the Potomac to the Cemetery of Heroes, Arlington. As the casket is returned to the caisson, there comes a family vignette that must take its place with those memories we hold warm and dear. A gentle reminder from his mother, and John celebrates his 3rd birthday with a soldier's farewell to his father. No finer epitaph could be extended President Kennedy than his own words from the speech he was to deliver in Dallas the day of his assassination. We in this country, in this generation, are by destiny rather than choice, the watchmen on the walls of world freedom. We ask that we may exercise our strength with wisdom and restraint, and that we may achieve for our time and for all time that ancient vision of peace on earth, goodwill toward men. That must always be our goal, and the righteousness of our cause must always underlie our strength. The world will remember those words of President Kennedy and his inaugural plea. Ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. The Irish Honor Guard with a flourish of arms, and the precious banner that was the President's shroud for 3 days is folded smartly for presentation to Mrs. Kennedy. An eternal flame is lighted before the grave by Mrs. Kennedy, the first such memorial to burn in Arlington Cemetery. She is followed by the President's brothers, Robert and Edward. Thus, the American people have buried their beloved leader. May his family find comfort in knowing they walked with greatness. And may the soul of John Fitzgerald Kennedy rest in peace. The horrifying ordeal of Frank Sinatra Jr. began while he was filling an engagement at Lake Tahoe. He was on the bill at the Hurrah Casino, and there was no shadow of the impending crime as he held the floor at an earlier performance. The young man was following in the footsteps of his father. The eldest Sinatra was the idol of Bobby Soxers in the 30s. While he was fulfilling his engagement at the resort on the California-Nevada state line, young Frank was staying at this motel annex. He was having dinner before one of his shows when his abductors moved in. An FBI padlock seals the door of his room as clues are sought. A trumpet player, John Foss, was with Sinatra when the two armed gunmen spirited him away. Foss was able to give the authorities little help as police set up roadblocks within 15 minutes. The kidnappers, however, slipped the net and drove their victim to Los Angeles 400 miles away. They forced Sinatra to make the trip hidden in the trunk compartment. The eldest Sinatra received 8 phone calls with instructions on ransom payments, and in the early morning hours, more than 2 days later, was able to announce his son's return. Young Sinatra had been released a few miles from home as others of the gang picked up the ransom money. He had a long rest at his mother's house after nearly 3 days with little sleep. The Directors Guild Theater is in the Hollywood spotlight as Tony Curtis and his wife arrive for a preview of Captain Newman, M.D. Tony is one of the stars of this new Universal picture that was directed by David Miller. Also starred in Captain Newman is Gregory Peck, who attends with his wife. Produced by Robert Arthur, the new film has attracted a gala audience, and that makes author Leo Roston happy. Sandra Dee is here with husband Bobby Darin, who also stars in the movie, a production that draws the plaudits of film figure Mervyn LeRoy. Captain Newman, M.D. will open shortly to be eligible for Academy Awards next year. Navy quarterback Roger Staubach, one of the football greats of modern times, receives the Heisman Trophy as the nation's outstanding college player. He earned the reward with performances such as this one against Duke. A past master at passing, Roger is cool and collected under pressure. His coach says Staubach has a sixth sense to do the right thing at the right time. He scores on the field, and now he scores with the sports writers. Roger Staubach, Navy's big gun. While the thermometer is dropping as winter sets in, there is one thing that is melting. That is the number of shopping days until Christmas. Throughout the nation, holiday buying appears to be heading for new highs. And toy sales, of course, account for the lion's share. It's the season for festive decorations, the time when stores and shops, streets and avenues look as if they belonged in some sparkling fairyland. It's the season of remembrance, when the warmth of goodwill should girdle the globe. But that goodwill reaches a grim dead end in Berlin at the Wall of Shame, erected by the communists. On the free side of the wall, a tree stands like a sentinel, a reminder to all of our precious gift of freedom. Berlin also honors the memory of President Kennedy. Meanwhile, U.S. servicemen are repairing and refurbishing toys for German orphans who would otherwise have empty stockings. These will bring a smile to a child's face on Christmas morning, and there's nothing more beautiful. The prosperity of Berlin on the west side of the wall is in sharp contrast with East Berlin, where the Red regime has called for even more austerity. The toys provide a feast for hungry eyes and spur all the small fry to become as angels for a while. Who would ever deny them their dreams of the twinkle-eyed traveler from the North Pole, the man of the hour?
Well, I looked at my clock, it said a 1:30. Hey, pretty baby, let's have some fun. Shaking in the stomping, shaking in the stomping. Shaking and a stomping, stomping and a shaking over you. Well, I looked at my clock and said a 4:30. Hey, pretty baby, don't you love me no more? Shaking and a stomping, shaking and a stomping. Shaking and a stomping, stomping and a shaking over you. Well, I'm a shaking and a stomping, shaking and a stomping, shaking and a stomping. Shaking and a stomping, shaking and a stomping, stomping and a shaking over you.
These have been some of the highlights of 1963. We've seen integration resisted at the University of Alabama until the National Guard moves in. And then a massive rally in Washington as 200,000 marchers call for action to end racial inequality. Kennedy's assassination stuns and saddens the nation, and Lyndon B. Johnson becomes the 36th President of the United States, promising to carry on the policies of his predecessor. 1963 has seen a continuing buildup of American military advisors in Vietnam. 1964 will see combat troops arrive and a hot war begin.